Coming from a small village, I had a lack of opportunities. I didn't have the same opportunities people in bigger cities had. I should start by saying it's very important we acknowledge this before we start the video, that wherever there is life, there is a chance for a toxic environment, a toxic area, a toxic network, a toxic person. Toxicity is not just one place. Wherever somebody has responsibility, i.e. management, and that person is disgruntled, perhaps they're jealous of you, perhaps they haven't got what they want in life, perhaps they have an ill bill of health, they will actively sabotage your career. So let's just take an example of a job now. Say you work behind a bar, and of course other bar staff can be toxic, but it usually starts at management. Management usually sets the bar. And perhaps you excel at your job, perhaps you're even better than the manager was when he or she first started. They will make your life, if they're jealous and if they don't want this bar to really thrive. You hear about people hitting sales targets, but it's very rare people want to hit sales targets and create a nice environment and keep staff, and to even lose staff. You've been here 2 years, you've done an amazing job, we're going to have a party, you deserve to go and you're going to do something else with your life. It's very rare you find those places. And these places exist everywhere, and sadly, as the modern world gets more faster and we get a bit more gimme, there is a lot more room for this sort of hostile work culture. But today I'm mainly talking about coming from a smaller environment. So I grew up in a very small village. In my primary school year, there was only 10 people in my year, 100 people in the school. Some of my American friends, they say there were 700 people in their year. So it's kind of crazy when you think that the people I knew in my childhood, I knew them all by name, I knew where they lived, I knew everything about them. But if I was to go to a bigger school with all these people, I probably wouldn't even, in this stage of life, I wouldn't even recognize them. And I wouldn't be able to keep all those names in my head. One of the hard things coming from so this is like I'm saying, this is small villages, perhaps a small town, or just a town what is very stifling. One of the hard things we face is a lack of change, lack of diversity, and lack of ambition. I didn't even know what ambition was. I didn't even know ambition was a thing. I was taught to always expect the worst out of life. That life is hostile, life is sinister, and that nothing good is ever going to happen to me. I can't have fun, I can't laugh, I can't have good food, I can't enjoy my friends because that friend's going to stab me in the back. Everything around me was hot and hostile. And in some respects, because the town I grew up in was a little bit toxic, it kind of was like that. There was no, in my schooling system, there was no opportunity for me to study a language or to do anything big with my life. I was bred to, if you use an example of a fishing town, have some people in fishing towns that the only work there is to fish. The only work around me was trades and offices, and you might think they sound fine, but they were dead-ending the fact that everybody in my area, they dated a certain person. So in my village alone, where I grew up in, there was about 4 girls to date from, and where I dated one of those girls, there was kind of like 16 boys, so it was kind of a bit of a fight to date one of those girls. I managed to date one, and when that ended, I generally felt like I'd never date again. And I would go out into the area, and there was just nobody there what had any magic or had any personality. And it seemed like, of course, in the area there'll be somebody. If I was to lift every single rock up, there'll be somebody to date. There's amazing people everywhere. And I'm not saying that these people. I guess I am saying that they were problematic in the sense that the men were sort of led to believe they needed a woman with a big chest, and some would stay at home and do the housework, and then the women were looking for somebody with not necessarily a good job, just a secure job, and maybe like a trade. And when I was 16, and it was very obvious that I wasn't going to get a trade, or it was very obvious I wasn't going to go down these very narrow dating routes. And all my friends and my peers, they were driving, They had long-term relationships. They were looking at already buying houses, and I was just still a kid. You know, I was just still drinking energy drinks and listening to music. You felt incredibly left out. You felt incredibly rigid, to the point my family just decided that it was over for me. They started sending my CV to jobs what are very, very difficult, and jobs where, if you like, I don't mean to be impolite, where they send people what don't have, they can't do much else. I was giving jobs to, when I say factory work, I mean real demeaning factory work. I was given, pot washing jobs, and pot washing is good for starting out when you're a kid. Just bin men, just basically my parents just threw my career against the wall because I didn't want to do a trade. The school tried to make me do a trade. I didn't like it, I didn't get it, I didn't get on with it. I found it too rigid. I faced a little bit of bullying, and because I didn't want to do that, they threw my career against the thing. It gets even more technical than that. It gets even technical to the point of, as I'm old now, I don't mind using tools to fix things and build things and work. It's not my go-to thing. I'm not a DIY expert, but as I got older, I fixed like boat engines, and I've done lots of mechanical things. But my parents just decided, my family decided that I couldn't do those things. Like, if you want, I was maybe not very masculine, or I couldn't approach those things. So they just decided that my life was over, and there was no, it's not that I was even set up to fail. Failure wasn't even an option. I was set up to nothing. There was no path for me. I was just born because my family just wanted a child, and that's what you did. That was the next step in their life, to have a child. I was coddled to the point everything was dangerous, and then there was absolutely no thing to keep healthy with exercise. There was no career. There was no you're gonna find a wife or whatever. It was just, you are gonna die in this town. And as I got older and you start to have different opinions to the people around you, your friends and your peers, you stick out even more, to the point you don't identify the place you come from, and the place you come from doesn't identify with you. So there are pros and cons from living in a small village. One of the big pros I got is amazing woods like this. I had an amazing childhood where I got to play in forests and by lakes, and we'd have barbecues, and we just spent all day out in the summer, like a summer day like today. We just spent all day out in the woods. There was no such thing as life beyond our childhood. All that was great, and I feel I have a calmer presence than people who grew up in the city, and I appreciate nature. I feel a bit more. Maybe people in the city do appreciate nature a lot because they didn't see much of it, but I feel I have a big appreciation for it. And there's kind of a quietness and a peacefulness in small towns, and you're kind of out the way. The world doesn't know about you. If tourists come to England, they have no idea where I live. It's like I fly into London, and then I take a train to my town, my city, and then I take another bus or taxi or whatever to a smaller town, and then from there I go even to a smaller village, which is where I'm from. So it's a place nobody's ever heard about, and because of that, tradition is upheld in my village. It's the same tradition for 100 years. There is very little time for movement. In my era, we were fighting for goal nets, and the new generation finally got them 10 years later, but there isn't enough kids to play with the goal nets. In my generation, there was about 30 of us, and we just couldn't, we weren't allowed nets, and now the school field has nets. So the change in my village is very small. And it was a middle class to high class village, so there was definitely emphasis on, they want you to achieve a lot as a student, and as a person. There was a competition between the adults to push their kid to achieve, which I certainly felt. I definitely felt like I was competing. So it was very hard to actually have friends, because the people who you were friendly with, you were sort of competing with, and most of these people have been pushed to be these islands, these lonely islands of just become musicians and become, I became a filmmaker, become filmmakers and become game designers has become absolutely everything. They'll push you to become everything they could possibly be, they could achieve. So it's kind of contradictory what I'm saying about ambition, but what the thing is, the scope of their ambition was within their own radar. So they still wanted you to go to holiday in France or Italy. So, when I was going to Thailand and Vietnam and Cambodia, it completely shook the foundation of people in my village. They were looking at me different. And when I wasn't overly into cars, or when I wasn't just dating people, whatever it was I was doing, you start to realize this really interesting thing, that you'll never ever fit in with them, because they're always going to look for faults, because they're always going to compare you against their children. And their children are big fish in a small pond. They go out and they achieve things and they come back, but they rectify, and they have their glory in this small village, pub. They show off their car, they show off their new jacket and their trainers, and it's just very stifling. It's like, when they go into the bigger picture, when they go into the world, when they meet the internet, they disappear. Nobody knows about them. But in this small community, they're kind of big names. So I grew up with people what were big names, and I guess the contradiction is that, I didn't know what ambition was in my own family, but I saw people around who were being pushed into it, and it's only when I got older I understood what ambition was, and the fact that you have to look after your health, and you have to want things, and you have to desire things. So my girlfriend, who went to school in London, she got to learn languages. She got pushed to excel at things. Well, she got pushed when she stopped. When she was clear to the teachers that she was going to do something big with her life, they pushed her. I was just at a school. It was very hard to fit in. It was basically survival. And I just got my head down, went day to day. And there were students what were pushed, but they were never, there were only a couple of them, and they were never ever really taken in. It wasn't like people loved these students. Like, it wasn't like the American thing where they are prom king and queen. It was like, these students are nerds and geeks, they're beneath us, they think they're better than us. And what you see is that mentality, it pummels them, and they never did go and achieve something, I think, from what I heard and saw, because everything in the environment I grew up in is to keep you down, is to pummel you, is to think the same thoughts. It's all the same thoughts. Let's all vote for the same government. Let's all believe the same thing. And you could say that is the world. That's the most interesting thing. You could say that is the world. But at least in cities there's more diversity and there's more room for opinion. So, when I had to fight just to get out of that environment, and I still am treated like a child when I go back to that environment. I'm still looked down when I go to that environment. I'm still not considered a man when I go to that environment. And I look for silver linings, and one of the silver linings I look for is, by not having the opportunities other people had, and this is just for everybody to take this advice, it affords me other opportunities. So growing up, there was no push for me to make money. I was expected just to earn a wage, and we all know now that, especially with the cost of living crisis, that a wage isn't enough. And because I wasn't pushed to make money, I had no value for money. And a lot of people raise their eyebrow at this, but this is the truth. I didn't want money. I didn't want to attain money. I just wanted enough to live and get by on. And that's actually kind of set me free a little bit, in the sense that I'm not driven by expensive cars and gold watches and lavish things. I am driven by the outdoors and thinking and adventure. So whatever your disadvantage is, I think it is important to see how a disadvantage actually might have changed your life. Perhaps if I was in a city, I would now be in an office building instead of being out in the country. perhaps it's enough that I'm dating somebody who is from the city. So we're both different stories. I'm the village guy. She's the big city girl. Perhaps it's okay to live under your own identity and being your own person. But I should say that anything I do prior to living in this village, and I should say I go back now and again, everything I do is very important to me. Very important. Everything I achieve I see as a small win. If it's I get on a plane, if it's even going to a supermarket is a small win for somebody like me who grew up with no shops around them. If you want to do your shop, you'd have to drive 20 minutes, half an hour to a big supermarket to get your shopping. Just going to a shop to me is unusual. It's unique. And to other people, it's daily life. They wake up and they go get cigarettes. So everything I do prior to living in that village I feel like I've escaped, and I feel like it is a victory, and I feel like it is a win. And that just filled me with this sort of pride that, but it works the other way as well, where nothing is ever going to be enough, because I'm working twice as hard as people who had opportunities what I didn't have. I have to work twice as hard as them. So my concluding advice is that if you are living in a small village, or even if you live in a city where there's a toxic area, I think you have to wake up and you have to fight. But don't fight against this. Don't fight against the unspoiled nature and the peacefulness. That's the one thing I never rebelled against. I was never too bothered about the fact there's one bus out my village every single day, and if not, you had to walk 2 miles. I was never worried about that. I mean, it sucked in some way, and my life was slightly different, but I wasn't really worried about the isolation. I was worried about what was taken away from me, and I guess you could say that a transport system was, but that wasn't my gripe. My gripe was people wanted me to fit in. People wanted me to honor a community I didn't believe in. They wanted me to be trampled on by them, and they wanted me to just be a part of the jigsaw. And we all are part of the jigsaw. I'm not saying this is not some convoluted thing where I'm saying we have to be better than everybody else. We have to rise up. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying you have to live your life from your own values. You have to wake up every single day and think, what is it I want, and what is it I want to do, and what is it I want to achieve, and what is going to make me happy. And when you come from those small environments, what are toxic and problematic, and you know what I'm saying, if you do come from those environments, the level of stifling, the level of suffocation is extreme. So perhaps if somebody is still trapped in that environment, I hope this video can provide some light that you're going to have to fight a little bit harder than normal people. You're going to have to roll your sleeves up. You're going to have to face a lot of rejection. I mean, for what I'm doing now, filmmaking, there is absolutely nothing in my area for filmmaking. But I decided to do it anyway. You see? And so I'm basically doing something that doesn't exist. And people around me don't want it to exist, and they stop it from existing. And in a way that can be quite freeing as well. Okay, have a good week. It's a very nice day today. The sun's only going to get stronger as the day goes on. And we're going to enjoy the football now. Have a good week, have a good life, enjoy yourselves. Ciao.